My presentation is about in this disrupted world and so-called VUCA world, how do we manage the supply chain? Okay, so you have seen a lot of activities happening in the last 5 years, right? And post 2014 onwards, you must have seen like various activities happening. So what are the activities which is happening, which is pretty common and pretty known to everyone? Anything which comes to your mind which has really impacted your supply chain massively in the last 2 years? So I'll just pause for a moment by saying demonetization started on November 8, 2016. That was the most important disruption which has happened, right? So stay with me for a moment before I get to the next slide. So firstly, India on a page, 10,000 plus years of existence, 2.2 trillion economy, 7.1% GDP growth, smart cities, 1.3 billion strong population, 57 million household in middle class, 65 to 70 crores internet penetration. So a lot of action and activities happening here. And with this action and activity, the complexity and the way supply chain is going to get managed in the future, believe in me, we have to work differently. What supply chain we had seen 10 years, 12 years back, and what supply chain we have been seeing for the last 4 years, and what we are going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, it will be in a frenetic pace. I think people will agree to this, right? You must have seen the changes in your life, how it is happening. So what I have tried to do is that, so I think this word is pretty popular, right? VUCA. See, VUCA as a, is an acronym. So volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, okay? So today we stay in the VUCA world. So for me, when I really imbibe internally this, as a VUCA, so for me, in my mind, what comes out right from November 8, 2016. The first action in terms of demonetization. So let me just give some kind of an examples here. What happened? Suddenly on November 8, we got to know that India is going to have this demonetization policy. We never knew what demonetization is all about. Then we Googled and found out sometime it has happened in 1975 or 77, something like that. So what is the kind of impact which is going to happen to this in supply chain? We just knew that some currency which was there, which will not be there. Consumers will be having a different set of behaviors. We never knew what kind of behavior is going to be there. The buying habits, the consumerism culture and stuffs like that, what kind of impact. So a lot of discussions and deliberations happened in the boardroom, okay? And to be very honest with you, it was very difficult, right? It was very difficult. And I'll tell exactly how the processes and the mandatory things which you should have in supply chain has really helped to tide over this kind of disruptions, right? So I'll go to the next slide later. But in the meantime, I just wanted to enlist some other things. Like one is demonetization. Secondly was about GST. It's definitely a disruption, right? So you had a tax structure got changed, just slew of changes. It did not change in 2017 only. So there were changes for price actually. The price came to 28, then from 25 to 28, 28 to 18, 28 to 18, a lot of changes. Then again we had e-way bill. Just take a pause and understand these changes which happened, how did it impact you? It really impacted a lot. When you have a change, right, that means, let's take the example of GST changes. The moment the rate changed, the entire spectrum, right from your pricing, grammages, everything got changed. All the products underwent for a change. That means the entire planning system, the distribution system, the distributors, everything went for a change. GST coming in the month of June 1st, if I'm not wrong, 2017. Suddenly in the month of March, we started getting murmurs. The distributors are going to upstock or destock. No one knew that actually what's going to happen. So GST also took place in 2015 in Malaysia. I had some stay in Malaysia, so I had some kind of inkling what happens in GST. We were deliberating actually what the distributors are going to do. And suddenly in the month of June, we got to know the distributors will be destocking. So there were always an up and down. There's a kind of a, kind of a to and fro motion happening. How much will be the destocking? What will be the impact? So all these things are basically not an easy job, right? And it has really cost, if you have not been able to manage GST pretty well, then you have been knowing that how much of impact it had on your back-end planning, your write-off, your rods and stuff like that, okay? Classical example. Suppose you are not aware of the fact how much your distributor is going to destock in the month of May, because June 1st it was there, or sorry, July 1st, whatever, M-1, right? So you'll be planning in a certain way. Suddenly you find that, oh my God, distributors are destocked to the extent of 20%. So what do I do? My inventory has been built up, right? There's a question of freshness, there's a question of write-off, there's a question of a whole planning system going out of toss. After having all these things and finally realizing, and when you introspect, you understand, yes, there has been a slew of disruptions and there will be disruptions in life. So what are the tools and how in this world currently you want to manage these things, because these things will be the norms. This will be not exceptions anymore. So I am saying VUCA as victory over unforeseen and crushing adversity. I'm not talking about volatility, uncertainty and stuff like that. So there's a problem and let's see what is the kind of opportunity and to find opportunity in adversity. So that is the motto. That is a very common motto, but it has been further accentuated here. One of the key things which we have done in Mondelez is about the right hand side, if you see, that is about the how we have really bonded together. It's a kind of jigsaw puzzle. So we have got engaged talent, we are demonstrating servant leadership, and then we are having the best of the processes in class, best in class processes, and finally the one which really binds together is the passion. Today someone talked about passion. I think it's a very common word, it's a cliche, but really passion, when it really comes, it can do wonders. And all these disruptions and whatever we see and how we have really tied over those things, I think the passion of the team and the bonding of the team and the collaboration that we have done has really helped us a lot. And I think those are the things which stand tall, and those are the things which are going to help you in the future as well. My only talent is that I just don't quit. So what are the key tools? So this presentation I had prepared some 3 or 4 months back after having the series of disruptions and the way it became a norm in our life. So I just thought, like, what are the key things that you should have to tide over this kind of things? One of the things which we already had is integrated business planning. Many of you out here must be knowing sales and operations planning happening, right? It happens in the industry. It was happening for the last 10-15 years. Integrated business planning a bit different. It really is a holistic planning right from the future projection of the next 24 months or 36 months, depending on the company and depending on the strategy, to your demand review, demand planning. It's not a demand collation, it's a demand planning. Then to supply planning, right? Then to integrated reconciliation, and finally a management business review. Now all these 5 processes, one talks about the funnel, which talks about your 4-to-1 calendar in terms of what are the projects you have in your pipeline. One talks about the demand, not about the short term. Short term demand, anyone can do that. 18 months, 24 months, 36 months, depending on the maturity of your industry or your company. Then you have the supply planning, and finally all this process of IR, integrated reconciliation, stuff like that. So I would like to tell you one thing. This process that we had in place, we had this process right from 2014, 2015. And we have matured. I'll show you some of the slides. I'll attribute the success to tide over the crisis to this particular thing. Had this process not been there, I was just imagining, suppose this process was not there, and with all these disruptions, how could I have managed the show? Imagine sales, marketing, everyone is having a different set of informations because of GST and because of demonetization. So everyone will be having a different set of numbers with them, right? There'll be sales will be talking about 100, marketing will be talking about much more bullish. Oh, fine, consumers are okay, fine, fantastic. Nothing is going to get impacted because of demonetization. We'll be selling 120. We'll be investing much more into the market, right? So many numbers will be floating across. And finally, supply chain will be grappling with 3, 4 or 5 series of numbers and will not be knowing which number they will be taking it and trying to produce or plan basis that. So you can just imagine the kind of catastrophe which is going to happen if this is kind of a process which you follow. So the panacea is basically IBP, wherein everyone collaborates and gives one number, which gets married and signed off, and that number flows, and everyone is responsible for that. Suppose I say the distributor will be destocking by 5%. Sales, yes. Category, yes. Supply chain, yes. And all the financial folks, yes. Freezed. Now that 5% becomes 8% or 7%, equally everyone is responsible. But just imagine that 5% coming to that 5% figure. That means everyone has put on their heads, right? So everyone has signed off that number. That becomes the mantra, and that is called the collaboration planning. So how much of help it can really render to the business companies who are running this process can be able to tell. But since we run the process, I know as a head of planning and log ops, the kind of joy that it has given to the entire team and to the enterprise among us. Why IBP? IBP is basically one way of working, right? It's a simple one way of working. You have these processes, you have the people responsible, you have the metric set, you have one set of numbers, and you run for that. Okay? One language, one integrated plan, aligning all the functional planning from marketing, sales, supply chain, finance, which I just talked to you. A lot of companies, you have a SNOP, you plan for 3 months or whatever, 12 months. Then again, you'll be having a latest estimate. Again, you'll be having a strategy planning for the next 3 years, right? IBP says no. If you are really having a cycle of IBP meeting every month, wherein you really forecast with power, data, science for 18 months, you don't have to plan again and again for your strategy for next year. The same rolling plan that you are doing it with all your intensity is going to give you the entire visibility of your strategy plan for the next 3 years as well. So you just imagine how much of your effort will be getting, your all non-value added activity, which you normally do, repetitive jobs and all. You plan once in the month of January, again you will do a strategy plan in the month of June, July, right? Again for the next year planning for your budget you'll be doing in the month of October. So if you have a solid IBP rolling process, this takes care of all. And believe in me, this really gives the joy and really gives the kind of a benefit to the entire enterprise. Okay. Does it make any sense what I'm speaking, or it's totally, I just wanted some response from you all. Is it making sense what I'm saying? So I'll not go into the details out here. I'll quickly, typical journey of IB. This slide is a bit complex, but I'll make it very simple. So when you started the journey, basically, we had year 1, 2, 3. If you see in the y-axis, there's a multi-dimensional axis out here. We are talking about people, process, tools, and the year 1, 2, 3, how the span has changed, If you just look into just one particular block here in the year 1 and see the people part. So we formed the new team, we injected capability in the team, and after a span of time, we talked about the capable and experienced teams. And in terms of process, we had the local processes, then we had the regional processes, and finally we had the tools in terms of APU and all. So what I'm trying to say with this slide is that it's a model, it's a model wherein the people, process and tools well entrenched, and nothing happens overnight. It's a journey. If you decide to have an IBP today, it will take a time, right? It will take time, it will take effort, and it will also talk about a big change in the leadership. It's a behavior. It's a behavior part, right? So if you see the year 2 part in the bottom, we're talking about stakeholders start believing in process. So when you talk about, the process part, firstly the stakeholder. Now stakeholder has to understand this very well. So most important is that how do you manage the stakeholder? If they understand this, then things go pretty well. So what I have framed out here is that what are the key things and how exactly we become successful out here. 4 blocks. The most important is your senior management support. Without that, you cannot even inch ahead, right? Like the way you had your SAP implementation or any other ERP implementation, your MD has to support. IBP is a process wherein there has to be an unstinted support from your senior management. Without that, it will be a failure. If that happens, balance all can be taken care of. The next is about the people and the process. Again, I am repeating, very capable. What we did was that we had decided that we will be having the top class people from the community to represent this process, right, in demand, supply and portfolio management. Then we talked about a standardized template. The template has to be signed. And believe in me, when you have a very standard, robust template, it really decreases the complexity. It provides a solid platform, and everyone signs off into that, and you then move ahead, right? The third important block is the robust building blocks. This is a part of the demand. It's a big chapter in itself, but I'll just touch upon a simple thing. If the building blocks in your demand for any kind of industry cannot be built or cannot be put into the system, then your demand planning will be just a sales collation. Sales will give you a number, A plus B plus C plus D, you'll just collate. Now building blocks mechanism of understanding the demand, that means you project a baseline, apply the statistical model, put the building blocks, and basis that you find a one number and marry that number, collaborate with sales category and get to one number and go ahead for that. And finally is about the gap closing action, because you might be having an ambition, I want to grow by 30%, but in a reality basis, you must be growing at the level of whatever 20%, right? But there will be some gaps. Fine, you have an ambition and there's a gap of 10%. So what are the things you are going to do? You cannot just go into a meeting in the month of February saying that, oh my God, in April I have to grow by 30%, but I don't have the plans. So your plans has to be ready. Good that IBP as a team has to tell, okay, fine, there's a gap. It's very important. You have to be transparent and neutral. Okay, one more point which I should have mentioned, the neutrality of the function. This function cannot be swayed away by sales or category. This function has to speak the mind with data and science. Okay? And if the gap is there between the ambition and the reality, let the gap be there, let the gap be surfaced. Then you can act on the plans. Before I end the IBP part and go to the next tool, the most important part out here is that transparency. If you're not transparent to yourself, transparent to yourself, then this thing is not going to work. You have to speak your mind and tell the facts back with data. People will challenge you, right? You wanted to grow 30%. Why people will agree to the point of 20%? But you have to explain what is the basis of 20% and what can be done. And you're planning for the future. In the month of January, when you walk into the meeting of IBP process, you are not planning for January, February or March. You are definitely planning for H2, so that whatever gap comes, you have got sufficient time to act into those gaps, invest, and get as close to the ambition number. The second important part is about, a lot of companies have done this, but we have done it pretty smart out here. This is called continuous replenishment system. I talked in the morning as well. This is a classical example of, getting into opportunity in adversity. So when demonetization happened, that was the time when we jumped into this, and we went in a rapid speed of converting all our distributors into vendor managed inventory or a continuous replenishment system. This is a very simple system, which means that you'll have norms of the distributor set and you'll be just replenishing to those norms. The only one thing is required: passion and diligence, and we can win for this. Typically, when you do a survey, you'll see that the sales salience in the week 4 is typically hovering between 40 to 50%, most of the companies. I have seen that after implementing CRS process, the sales salience has come down to the level of 27 to 28%. That means in week 4, the sales salience is 28%. My warehouse people leave the premises by 7 p.m. in the night, which used to be some 12 p.m. or 1 o'clock in the morning. So if you ask me what is the kind of change which has really happened by implementing this process, one is about the data, the science, the presentation, the flamboyancy. The root part is that the testimony to the success of this will be, my depot is getting closer 7 to 8 p.m. in the night. My distributors are more happy, less inventory, solid scientific norms, committed delivery, write-off and rods reduction, load formation easy to plan, so many benefits. So post this disruptions or the slew of disruption that happened, IBP and CRS are the two key things that has really helped us a lot to tide over the entire crisis. Third, a very common thing, I'll not delve much into this, it's called integrated Lean Six Sigma. I think the way in manufacturing, any factories you go, you have this IL Six Sigma. I think this should be a part of the DNA of each and every function. We have started in planning, logistics and all. So like the way in the morning in a factory, there's a daily management systems. That means what has happened yesterday, starting from safety, what actions you have taken, what are the things went wrong, what are the things went right, and what is going to happen in the next 3 days. The way diligently, like a military exercise, factories do that. Same thing we started doing in the warehouse, same thing we started doing in the co-packing location, same thing we started doing in our planning team as well, right? This has really helped a lot. I am not saying that IL Six Sigma is only about the DMS part, it's one of the part. There's a phase 0, phase 1, phase 2 certification. In Mondelez, factories have done a tremendous amount of job into this. In our function of planning and logistics, we have just got phase 0 certified. But I think it's a clear example of brilliant in basics, and this becoming a tool, kind of a pedestal, it helps a lot, and we have seen the kind of joy which comes out from this kind of process. So this is the third thing, this is the third pillar actually, which really helps. They got 11 pillars in fact in IL6s. I think who on this earth currently will not be knowing about artificial intelligence, robotics and stuff like that. The only thing which I would like to tell out here is that the speed with which it's coming is like unimaginable. A lot of people might be also thinking that, oh fine, we had Y2K in 2000, that a lot of hype and hoopla happened, but ultimately it got managed, right? I think if you're thinking that, then you're in a fool's paradise. It is happening, this is happening at a breakneck speed. You will not even imagine, because we used to also think in the same way, okay fine, if China is doing some robotics or automation, India it will come after 7, 10 years or 12 years. No. If China is doing yesterday, India is going to do today. That is the kind of speed which is happening. So I'll take you through something about here where I think this is my fourth pillar actually, the digital supply chain framework. So classically what I've tried to do out here is that what are the key pillars in supply chain where we can really work digital and where we can really work very fast, at a very fast speed, and where it will take some time. If you see in the left hand side, I've just written about the 7, 8 pillars: demand forecasting, inventory planning, warehouse, network, and so on and so forth. If you see the second column, very high, demand forecasting and planning, the big data and the predictive analysis is going to come in a very big way. The entire concept of demand planning, wherein you have statistical modeling, you have APO and other systems, the way machine learning is going to do the demand planning just 2 years from now, you will be totally mesmerized by knowing this. Machine learning, what they'll be doing is that they will be sitting with you, they will be understanding the way you plan, they'll be understanding the models, they will arrive at the intelligence that you have embedded into the system, and that intelligence after 6 months will come to a level, then it will exponentially go up. That is exactly what is going to happen. And you'll see very fast how demand, not only demand, supply, all of the planning, how your machine learning is going to change the way things are going to happen. Similarly, inventory planning and management, you'll be having big data and predictive analytics. Warehouse management, augmented reality. We already talked in the morning, so I'll not touch upon the most. But I think IoT, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, machine learning, these things will be the DNA. And to all supply chain colleagues, I think we have to imbibe this pretty fast, because without this, I don't think so we can really move, because we have to move very fast and very in a very accelerated pace. This is one of the things which we have done, which I wanted to show, how digitalize your log of operation can happen. Today, any vehicle which enters into my factory through an app, the security guard gets to know. The indent to the transporters are through an app. So the transporters might be anywhere. It's a kind of overriding. The transporters can be anywhere. They will be getting to know that today is Friday. What are their indents for the month? What are the indents for the month, for the days of Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? The moment the vehicle comes into the factory, the guys will be knowing, the security guard will be knowing, security guard will be monitoring its transit time inside the factory, right? And from there when he loads the truck from the factory and finally goes after 5 days and reaches a distributor, reaches a warehouse, entire thing is monitored. We have got an EPOD system as well, and basis that the payment also happens then and there. We don't even wait for the things. So this is a very simple system which talks about digitalization of the downstream supply chain in logistics. Right from the time you want to give the indent to the transporters to the time it comes to the warehouse, you unload and do the payment. It's entirely digitalized. And these are the success stories regarding IoT, wherein I talked in the morning about IoT. I think IoT is very important, and particularly for logistics folks out here, how IoT is going to impact your life. IoT is going to talk to the connected devices. Today I am sending my chocolates in a cold chain environment of 18 to 24 degrees centigrade. I don't even know at what temperature that transporter is trying to do in the 5 days of journey, right? So today I am having system through which I can dynamically monitor what is the kind of a real-time temperature. Today if a vehicle is at Ajmer, for example, I can just get into the screen and then get to know what temperature he's having currently, whether he has switched off the AC or not. So this is the power of IoT, and I think the power of IoT in logistics is really humongous, and it will be really, really beneficial. All my coolers that are in the market today, if I have to know the temperature, what is prevailing in the coolers, how do I know that? Different systems, how they'll be connected. So everything can happen through IoT, and this is one of the greatest joy which currently I am having, because one of the things which I had in my mind to have a dynamic monitoring, this is exactly what it's catering to, the needs. Digital fleet monitoring is the same thing about the IoT which I talked about, but this is much more about the predictability, whether your vehicles needs the repair and maintenance and all, and how you can predict that and how the cost can be reduced. Currently, it looks like a very big topic. Oh my God, how it can happen, how it is going to get predicted and all. Everything is possible. Since you did not have any kind of a data, you never bothered about that. Today, you'll be having every data in your apps, and basis the predictive analytics which will be embedded into the system, you can get to know, and basis that you can reduce your cost as well. It's a question of just time. These are some of the used cases anyway, and many more like this, wearable devices, drones, which you already talked. Thank you very much.